Alrighty guys, welcome back to T.Y's TV Corner. Today, we're finally gonna get that His Dark Materials review that I've been promising for about 2 weeks now. I figured it was appropriate since I have the morning off and nothing to do. So today, like I said, welcome back to T.Y's TV Corner, His Dark Materials edition. We're gonna jump right into it. Really, we're not gonna waste too much time. I do have an appointment at 1:45, so let's get to it. His Dark Materials. It's a wonderful show. For any of you, though, for those of you who don't watch it, or are looking to watch it, don't watch this video yet. You have to have seen seasons 1 and 2 up until now. For this video to be for you. So I don't want to be anyone who spoils something for you, so don't watch if you haven't seen those episodes yet. I do have a quick announcement before we start. So last night I spoke to Kim Rhodes, who plays Sam and Dean's friend in Supernatural, Sheriff Jody Mills, sorry, and she is going to be joining T.Y's TV Corner for a special Supernatural edition on December 14th. That episode will air around 7 p.m., just like the Mark Pellegrino episode. So stay tuned for that, and go to YouTube, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss it. It'll be premiering, and it's going to be really, really, really fun. We're also raising money for my mother's breast cancer fund. It goes directly to her to help her with medical bills, prescription costs, and chemo treatment. So if you have any money to spare, a couple dollars, $5, $10, that's all we're really asking. Nothing crazy. I know it's the holiday season. This link will be available for a while, so you'll get your chance to donate if you can. Alright, so His Dark Materials, Season 2, Episode 1. Here we go. I'm excited. Are you excited? Are you excited? Are you excited? I'm excited. Alright, so after last year's, surprise hit first season, the BBC and HBO's collaborative adaptation of His Dark Materials continues apace in the City of Magpies, which won't necessarily persuade, literary purists, but it has enough of its own, ideas going on to be an entertaining romp through a newish reality. You'll recall that at the end of the first season, Daphne Keene's Lyra witnessed her friend Roger die at the hands of her dad, Lord Asriel. So she steps into like a relatively unknown portal to a new world, which is where the premiere picks things up. I thought that was, I like when there's no gap in between seasons. I like when it just kind of picks right back up where you left off. So I thought that was really cool. So with Lyra and Pant, I don't know how you pronounce his real name, but I call him Pan. So exploring their new surroundings and grappling with everything they've experienced thus far, this brings Lyra into the company of our long-awaited favorite character, Will Perry, which also makes for the major turning point of the series. The moment when these two heroes come together, finally. Season 2. So Season 1 kind of mashed up the two first books of the series and took elements from The Subtle Knife and brought it into His Dark Materials, which I thought was a unique twist on how to compose the series. So the moment when these two heroes come together and unite in the shared traumas of their pasts and mutual responsibilities they have to their future, it's a big moment. It really is. It's a big moment. And one of the first, besides her interactions with Roger, that has allowed Lyra among similarly aged company, which is a pretty integral element in a story in large part about the loss of innocence and wide-eyed wonder at the discovery of people, places, truths that had rightly been closed off to innocent children. Season 2 is it's quick to remind, all that there is no room for innocence in this newer, darker world, where kids and that sense of moral responsibility is much rarer than anyone would like. In many ways, these two represent the opposite of Miss Coulter, still expertly embodied by Ruth Wilson. Ruth Wilson does a wonderful job playing a villain. She's very driven, maniacal, but she also has a human side of her that you can see that's very motherly and nurturing. And she just really wants her kid back, but her moral compass is just so far off that it's crazy. So Ruth Wilson seems born to play this role. She has the capacity for goodness, but the instincts for corruption and cruelty. Many have quibbled with the depictions of various beloved characters in the series, but The City of Magpies is a reminder that Wilson's casting was a masterpiece, and that her relish of villainy is one of the strongest through lines. This premiere is also very much a comforter, contrasting Lyra's alienation with the audience's familiarity at seeing old faces like Lee Sorsby, the Texan with an attitude, who I love. I think he's one of the better characters in the whole show. And Serafina Pekkala. But it is also a tease for fans of the book who know what's coming and what to look for. Those who are concerned for the safety of the adult characters moving forwards, Ruta Scotty gets an introduction here, as do the grown-ups menacing specters, which are like... So in the world that they go to, that the world that Lyra and Will are in, it's been ravished by these things called specters. And if you read the books, you know that they're born from the subtle knife. So the more the subtle knife is used, the more specters are born. And Lord Asriel tapped into it and opened a portal which caused the specters' invasion into this new reality, which I thought... So I was kind of confused that when they first introduced specters, because I thought they came just from the subtle knife, but apparently Lord Asriel tapped into the subtle knife's power. I'm not sure how that works, but I'm assuming we'll get some sort of explanation soon. We're a couple episodes in, and we haven't even seen Lord Asriel yet. So we'll get there. We'll definitely get there some way, somehow. So, stacking the deck against anyone who isn't of drinking age, the Spectres, although the youngsters have their own share of things to worry about. It's functional above all else, but the City of Magpies is nonetheless an excellent, excellent introduction to new characters. Game of Thrones, the little girl, she's in it. I forget her name right offhand, but she's amazing. She can still get that, intensity about her, which is, I love that they carried that over. New worlds, new ideas that'll hopefully come to define this sophomore outing. It was divisive in its first go-around, and it will likely remain so, at least I'm hoping so. But the space in the television landscape for a reality-hopping fantasy adventure is always better filled than left vacant, which I agree with completely. So, episode 2 kind of kicks off. It's called The Cave. And it takes off with Lyra rushing into Will's Oxford, despite realizing that it's completely different from her Oxford. Will leaves her alone to take care of his own business while he takes care of his. Looking for a more familiar spot, Lyra finds a museum. Inside, she consults the alethiometer, finally, because she wouldn't dare to ask it any questions for the first episode, because she thought that it was the alethiometer's fault that she thought the alethiometer was telling her incorrect information and giving her wrong ideas and wrong flashes. So she thought that was she thought it was lying to her, I guess, is the morals of that story. But she asks it how to Man, that just totally threw me off. She asks it on how to find the scholar. It tells her to look for St. Peter's College and look for a door with a huge mountain on it. And one little note, it tells her not to lie to the scholar. Sounds simple, right? Right as she was about to exit, though, she bumps into Lord Boreal, who falsely introduces himself as Charles. We know his name's not Charles. She does not. And he comes off as a kind of snide historian who just wants to talk to her, wants to talk to little children, which is creepy in itself. Lyra shoots back immediately with another lie, introducing herself as Lizzie. Good job, Lyra. Though she escapes his presence with a mere calling card, Boreal didn't miss the alethiometer in her hands. So, the audience and all of us know that he's from her world, but he's playing off as someone from her world, this new world, or Will's world, I should say. There's too many worlds. Too many. But following the alethiometer's instructions, Lyra finds Dr. Malone. And Dr. Malone is a huge part of the book. And she's just as bright and wonderful as she was in the books. That's another ace in casting right there for his Dark Materials. Really, really spot on. Anyway, Lyra doesn't do a good introduction and explanation of why she's there. Finally, though, she just sinks down and everything comes pouring out. Her guilt about Roger, her grief, and the pain that's driving her to find out about Dust. Realizing that she was no ordinary child from her confession, Mary agrees to answer Lyra's queries. Shadow particles. So in Dr. Malone's world, dust is known as shadow particles. Found them in her studies of dark matter. We all know what dark matter is, but in Lyra's world, it seems there's a connection between the two. Especially, so she found that these particles respond to certain objects, especially man-made ones, as if they were conscious. So when she hooks them up, they kind of make this graph kind of come to life almost. So the particles kind of seem to respond to human thought, as if the person holds their mind in a state of expectation without impatience. Realizing that's exactly what she does with the alethiometer, Lyra becomes more certain that they're talking about the same thing. To prove her point, Lyra brings out the alethiometer and tells Mary to ask her something she would never have known. Classic trope, but it's going to work really well. At least here. Mary asks what she did before she became a physicist. After a few clicks and turns, Lyra reveals she was a nun? What? A nun? That ultimately convinces Mary to take Lyra to the cave. There, Mary hooks up Lyra to the computer, and what ensues is a magnificent display of the show's particles responses. Shadow particle response, not show. At first, it's just waves, but as Lyra puts her mind to it, she manages to communicate with the particles in the alethiometer's language. No biggie, right? She also mentions they can form words. Astounded. Mary rushes to take notes, as any earthly person would, right? You're seeing this absolutely extravagant thing happen. And then she asks Lyra to meet her the next day because she wants more, but Lyra's got to go because she's late to meet Will back at their spot. Lots of stuff going on. This episode, fantastic so far. The other side of the Perrys. After making sure his mother was safe, Will attempts to access the trust, like the money, left by his father. Unfortunately, being a minor, he couldn't. But his mother's lawyer reveals that there are people who can help him. His grandparents, Graham and Annabelle Perry. We're as shocked as Will on this one, since they were never mentioned in the books, but it's not an unwelcome nor beloved addition to his Dark Materials. Some things always have to change when you do an adaptation of a novel to TV. First off, you don't want things to be exactly the same as they were in the book. You do want to have a couple surprises for fans, of all the material, and you don't want to. You don't want an exact recreation. Superhero films have been doing this for as long as I can remember, and Stephen King's adaptations constantly do it. They tweak minor plot elements as to not change the overall story, but to tweak it to fit their retelling. So sadly, his grandparents don't seem to be the loving, doting grandparent type. They seem very, very not twisted, but ulterior motives. You can tell that they're there. Sure, they're loaded and they might seem a little bit concerned about Will, but they were just as absent from Will's life as his dad. And as soon as Will mentions that the trust, his grandfather goes off all upset. It seems like this was the only thing the man expected from Will and his mom. Once he finds himself alone, the old man whips out his phone and calls somebody we never expected to appear this soon. John Perry, played by Andrew Scott. More surprisingly, by the car setting, he seems to be in Will's world. This becomes more apparent when he tells his father that he's coming soon to get Will. Back in the living room, though, Annabelle starts getting more loose-lipped. She starts off by mentioning the condition of Will's mom, but what really gives her away is that she mentioned the police were desperately searching for the letters. At that, Will pretends to make a mess and dashes out of that house. He's outie, boy. He was like, what? What, police? Looking for letters? All right, yeah, spilled something. Dipped real quick. The next mission, Lyra and Will eventually meet back up, but Lyra's tardiness really upsets Will. He becomes more agitated when she insists that their next step would be find his father. All his life, he'd only known that his father left them, and he was left to care for his poor mother. So for the second time that day, Lyra reveals the ethiometer. Sitting there, finally finding someone to trust in Will, the two of them enjoy the last moments of peace they'll get for at least this season. The battle for the cardinalship. Snap back to Lyra's world. Miss Coulter and her little toy, Father McPhail, have been making their moves to take over the cardinalship. McPhail has one tough opponent, literally. The dude's really, really intense. Father Graves, played by Sean Gilder. While McPhail is more subtle in his ways, Father Graves is your typical father, screaming blasphemy at every single thing that he doesn't agree with, and the precious church teachings. This point is proven when the magisterium brings in Dr. Lanzlius, Amid Djali, who was supposed to broker peace between the witches and the magisterium. On his first steps into the room, though, it's obvious he wasn't going to go home that day. While he maintains that Queen Ruta Skadi, played by Jane Anuka, acted on her own, the magisterium has already decided that her stabbing of the cardinal was a declaration of war. So what happens in the first episode, I kind of skipped over it, was, so the magisterium has a witch trapped, and they're kind of questioning her, kind of getting a feel for what she knows, and Miss Coulter is the one that's torturing her, if you will. She's like pulling out pieces of the community tree out of her that gives her powers. So this witch, Ruta, kind of flies through the air in like this cool, epic like scene. And she's flying. She arrives at the place where the other witch is being held, and she like turns into like a smoke monster and kind of like moves in like a slow motion kind of way through. Kills her, well, I don't know if she kills her sister witch, but she allows her to die instead of being tortured for, you know, the remainder of whatever. And on her way, on the other witch's way out, the one that came to save her, she has to kill a bunch of magisterium officials. And then she hides against the wall, waits for the main cardinal to come out, and then she stabs him and takes off. But, you know, we all know Miss Coulter. Out of any bad situation, she'll turn it into a chess match and a way for her to gain ground. So, as Dr. Lanzlius attempts to explain the ways of the witches, saying that they know things that our normal humans don't, Father Graves suddenly starts screaming blasphemy. Only the authority can know things that humans don't. I wish he was choked, honestly. I really do. Instead of negotiating peace, the magisterium locks up Dr. Lanzlius. We'll take Father Graves screaming any day, though, instead of what Father McPhail had in mind. Ultimately, Father McPhail won the voting and became the next cardinal. Once that was done, Miss Coulter dropped all pretenses and basically blackmailed him into turning his cheek the other way to whatever she was planning on doing next. And after finding out where Lyra was from, Asriel's old servant, she left the magisterium. Honestly, it's one of the best exits ever, at least from like a TV standpoint. I thought it was kind of like a mic drop moment. She just like, I don't know. And the two had like some sort of connection that you could feel. Like you could really feel it. It was crazy. They would have made a great pair though, honestly. Before the voting, McPhail ordered a bunch of airships to load up on the naphtha explosives. While the priests were voting on the on the next honorable man to take the cardinal ship, those very ships were dropping those bombs onto the witch's home and destroying it. It looked like a scene straight out of a war movie. Great visual aesthetic. It was done perfectly. Queen Serafina Pekkala and Queen Ruta Skadi could only watch in horror as their motherland burned. It was, like I said, straight out of a Saving Private Ryan kind of deal. It was awesome. I mean, it was terrible, but it was awesome. All right, and that's how that episode ends. So episode 3. Quite often while watching His Dark Materials, I'm surprised in its totality. It isn't a lot worse than it actually is. This season was unashamedly altered by the COVID-19 pandemic, which is understandable. But it's also veering away from Philip Pullman's novels in a way that doesn't always make sense. It's frequently succumbing to, it's a lot of world building and self-indulgent, and its metaphors are too explicit in its storytelling, a little bit too stodgy. Amongst all this, though, it's a fantasy framework that remains undeniably compelling, and a truly excellent cast that manages to hold everything together through sheer force of will. I'll say this. Episode 3, I thought it was fantastic. A lot of critics and a lot of like Philip Pullman literary purists don't like that they're changing certain aspects and certain elements. But I mean, you got to do that. You got to do it for adapting. Like I said earlier, you can't take something. You can't take a book, turn it into a script, word for word, and then shoot that. It just doesn't work that way. And critics, honestly, get a real job. Get a real job. Get a podcast or a YouTube show and talk about it. Because you detract people from either going to the theater, when you hate spew, your trashy Rotten Tomatoes scores at certain things. I do not like you. I do not respect you. Get a real job. Or just stop. Because I can't deal with it. I can't. So I mentioned last week that I like how the show allows Will and Lyra to be kids, even while saddling them with world-saving quests. I felt echoes of that in Lyra's encounters with Lord Boreal in episode 3, impersonating a wealthy collector named Charles Leitrim, which reeked of stranger danger again. You can have all the witches and bears and thinly disguised allegories that you want for the Roman Catholic Church, but there's little more terrifying than a young girl being accosted by a strange man. Likewise, there's little more tempting for kids than the idea of specters and ghouls and dangers around every corner. Behind every stained glass window, this stuff, the gradual eroding of adolescence and innocence, is a lot more compelling than the show's more fantastical elements, such as a largely needless scene in which Royal Pansborn, Lorik Byronson, meets with Serafina Pekkala's eagle demon, Kaisa, to reiterate Lyra's overall performance and break it down. The undeniable highlight of Theft is Lee Scoresby getting absolutely beat down by Miss Coulter. So Lee gets captured after killing somebody by accident in the beginning of the episode. The Magisterium shows up, takes him into custody, and then the next scene we see is Miss Coulter walking into what we think is going to be to interrogate or terrorize this man. She does a little bit, but it's more with her words. And Lee is going back and forth, telling Miss Coulter, I will never give Lyra up. I will never. Her life is worth, or my life is worth 1/10 of hers. And all of a sudden, Lee tells this story about his dad beating him, and Miss Coulter and him, they connect on like this really weird level. Miss Coulter leaves after, getting a couple answers from him and talking to him, and then comes back afterwards when she finally finds out where Lyra is. And she just lets him go, and then he escapes. But I thought that scene was the best, hands down the best scene in episode 3. Let me know what you guys think, but I just thought the shared emotional trauma, and their wildly different meanings, or means of dealing with it, it gave it a more interesting, contour, that keeps the latter, a much more complicated figure than a simple one-note evildoer in Miss Coulter. Ruth Wilson's fantastically nuanced performance is at its best here. Playing against someone like Lee, it just fits so great. With the production compromised by the pandemic, it's impossible to say whether this will all manage to coalesce, especially given the jumbling up of Pullman's fictions. It remains a show with its fair share of problems, but awesomeness. Like, it has its fair share of problems, but it also has elements that are truly original in the way they do it. Great visual aesthetic, world building, they do a really good job. It's just some of the dialogue doesn't seem to fit in the overall, it just seems a little bit rushed at some points. But then again, they do have a budget, and you can tell that with all the VFX, they kind of use most of their budget for the visuals. So, I think if the show gets a little bit more popular, they'll get a little bit better in the sense of being able to spread the wealth throughout their production. So let's hope it continues. Overall, the first 3 episodes, I'm going to give a 7.9 out of 10. I think that you could tell in the end of episode 3, Theft, that... Oh, and by the way, Lord Boreal has the alethiometer. The way episode 3 ends, and really all you need to know from episode 3 was the Miss Coulter, Lee Sorsby interaction and imprisonment, and then letting go. But Lord Boreal gives Lyra a ride, and it's the most intense and tense Stranger Danger moment of the whole series. She is running from someone after leaving the doctor's cave again. She goes there to meet her on the second day like she had promised, and someone is there waiting for her to answer questions. The doctor helps her escape by kind of distracting the detective, who isn't probably a detective at all. But then the chase is on. Lord Boreal, posing as Charles, kind of pulls up on Lyra as she's running. He's like, "Oh, do you want to ride?" And she's like, "No." Looks behind her, that classic trope, and she's getting chased. Then she jumps in reluctantly. He gives her a ride for a little bit, and she soon realizes that, like, this is fucking weird. Why am I in this dude's car? Well, get me out of here, man. This dude's like 50, I'm 10. And so she gets out. He lets her out reluctantly. He did not want to, but he's driving a sweet Tesla. But she forgets her bag with the alethiometer in it. What, Lyra? You gotta pay more attention, girl. What are you doing? What are you doing? So she forgets her bag. He calls out to her after she's a little bit down the road, and she's like, "Hey, Lyra!" Oh, no, what does he call? "Lizzie! Your bag!" She soon realizes that the alethiometer is not in the bag, and she starts crying. The end of the episode ends. The end of the episode, Will and Lyra find his card that he gave her originally. They get his address, and they show up at his house. Boss move, by the way. Boss move on you two. Go get your thing. They show up to Lord Boreal's house in the real world, or our world, Will's world, and they start demanding the alethiometer back. He pulls it out of a safe, says, "Is this what you're looking for?" And they're like, yeah. Just like in the books, the Magisterium aims to get the subtle knife, which is in that third world that they met up in the big clock tower, in the town that they're in, the one that you can see from Lyra's world in the Northern Lights, which translates to City of Magpies. That's why episode 1 was called that. So Lord Boreal makes a deal with Lyra and Will. They have to get the subtle knife out of the clock tower that's guarded by the specters, in order for him to give the alethiometer back. Episode ends. So, like I said, 7.9 out of 10. So far, so good. Couple issues, but there's always a couple issues in in all TV shows and stuff like this. However, the moral of the story is, if you would like to watch a good show, a decent show, this is it. It has all your elements. You laugh, you cry, you have fun, get tense. There's science fiction aspects, talking bears. I mean, it's a good overall show. And Daphne Keane, Ruth Wilson, they all do a wonderful job. James McAvoy, who hasn't showed up in season 2, I don't know if he will till the end. But overall, I mean, it's a good show. I couldn't ask for, too much more. Maybe a little better of a dialogue exchange between characters, and a few more similarities between the books. But, we've gone over that. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. What I'm going to do is, after tonight's episode 4, I'm going to film again. That way we're caught up. I know I was supposed to do this last week. However, Mark Pellegrino, he wanted to come on, so I made time for him. And then next week, we have another supernatural actor, Jody Mills, coming on. So I need to get episode 4 done almost immediately, because next Monday, episode 5 airs. But I'll also be interviewing Jody, Kim Rhodes. So I have a lot on my plate. I'm super sorry. I'm trying to get to everything. I do all the editing, so it's hard for me to make sure, I have to spread my time out. If no one has told you today, I love you. The Pop Culture Corner loves you, and loves you. If you ever need anybody to talk to, we're always here, and we're always willing to lend a helping hand. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental illness, depression, anxiety, and is thinking of hurting themselves, reach out. We're always here to talk, or call the National Suicide Hotline. Don't suffer. You don't have to. And as always, we're raising money for my mother's breast cancer awareness and treatment. If you have a couple extra dollars and can donate, the link is below. So please, if you can help out, it means the world to me, and I know she appreciates it. We'll get her on here one day to talk to everybody and to say thank you. I know she would like to. So far, so good. We've gotten a few donations, and I am really thankful to everybody, to Jack, to Ty, to Dylan, Justice, myself. Thank you, everyone who's donated so far. This link will be up for a while, so don't worry, it's not going anywhere. I know the holidays are tough for everyone, especially during a pandemic. If you can't donate now, sharing the message is free, and it goes just as far. Thank you guys so much for joining me today on TY's TV Corner, His Dark Materials edition. I'll be back with you tonight to review episode 4 of His Dark Materials. Then we'll be back with you again on Wednesday for Quick Dip. And then this weekend, we'll be back for another episode of the Pop Culture Corner. I love you guys. Thank you so much.
We do it for you, and we do it for the culture.